June exam 2023, economics paper 1. So remember the duration of the paper is 2 hours. And remember, before you can kickstart in answering any question, you should always make sure that you go through a set of instructions and information in that particular paper. So now, if we throw our eyes on this screen, we see that we have the instructions there that runs from 1 up until 8. So now remember, grade 12s in each and every question paper, regardless of paper 1 or paper 2, you always chase for 150 marks. And we have 3 sections for each and every paper. So now we have section A. In most cases, this section A, it is compulsory. It carries 30 marks. And we also have section B. Section B comprises of 3 questions, of which the expectation is to select only 2 questions that you feel comfortable with. Right. So now moving on to section C. Section C, in most cases, you are given 2 questions, and the expectation is to choose only 1 question. Okay. So now let's check the allocation of marks per section. So now section A, you fight for 30 marks, and section B, each question carries 40 marks. So all in all, under section B, you'll be fighting for 80 marks. So now, then the last section, which is section C, each question carries 40 marks, of which the expectation is only to select 1 question. So now, if you add all of them, then they will sum up to 150. So now, grade 12s, bear in mind that following the instructions or the information, it is part of the examination. So make sure that you make it a norm or you make it a culture to always follow the given set of instructions. Because the moment you fail to follow the instructions, then you have actually failed before you can start your paper or the examination. Okay, right. So now let's check question 1. Let's check question 1. Question 1 under section A. So now we have 30 marks, and the time allocated to go through this or to complete this section is 20 minutes. And make sure that you run for that 20 minutes whenever you complete this question. Because the moment you fail to go through this question within the stipulated or given or scheduled time, in that regard, it means that you are going to battle to finish up the paper. Okay, right. So now question 1, in particular 1.1, it reads as follows. Various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the correct answer and write only the letter. In the bracket, you've actually been shown as an example that the options that will be given, you will be given option A, B, C, up to D. So now, also, if you check there, you are given an example on how to answer this section in a perfect manner. Okay, right. So now, let's start the work now. 1.1.1. It reads as follows. Which of the following is a real flow in the product market? So now remember, grade 12s, before you can actually jump onto answers, you should always make sure that you understand the key concepts given in a question. Also, you must check the action verbs that have been used in that particular question. So now if we check this question, we have real flow as well as the product market. Okay, so now if you still remember the real flow and the product market, if you draw a bigger picture, these concepts, they fall under the circular flow model. What is this circular flow model? Then we shall discuss that as time lapses. So now let's check the real flow and also let's check the product market. When we talk of a word market is a platform where goods and services are being bought and sold. Why are we saying that a word market is a platform? Because transactions can either be performed physically or electronically. So now that is why we're actually saying that a market is a platform. Okay, right. So now let's check the product market. We have different set of market or different types of market. If time allows, I'll actually go through them. But for now, since we don't have enough time, let's quickly focus on the type of the market that we're actually faced with. We have product market. So product market is a platform where buying and selling of goods and services do take place. That is the product market. Here we check the goods and services that are actually being bought and sold. So now, when we talk of the real flow, we have two types of flows. We have money flow as well as the real flow. So now under real flow, we check the flow of goods and services. We check the flow of goods and services as well as the flow of vectors of production. While under money flow, we check the flow of expenditures or expenses as well as the flow of income. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, in order for you to master this kind of questions, you should always make sure that you apply the method or the strategy that is best. And of all the strategies up to this far that I think can work best for you, grade 12, so as to attain or achieve the higher mark is when you apply the strategy that we call elimination method. Okay, right. So now this elimination method, what do we do? You normally compare the options given. And then the ones that you see that they are far from being correct, you cancel them out up until you are actually left with the one that you think is mostly correct. Okay, right. So now let's check option A. Option A, we have the spending flow on goods and services from households to firms. It's out. So we cancel it, it's out. So now the second one, which is B, we have the flow of the vectors of production from household to firms. And then also this one is totally out. So now let's check the next one, which is C, option C. Then it reads as follows. The income flow from firms to household through the vector market. Also this one is out. So now it means that automatically we are now left with what? We've left with D. And that makes D our answer. The best answer is the flow of goods and services from firms to households. Remember, I said that in order for you to master this, you should understand the concept. So now, since the product market is the market is the platform where goods and services are being bought and sold. So in this regard, this calls for D as the correct option compared to other options. So now, grade 12s, bear in mind that most of these answers, they are pretty close to one another. That is why you should always take into account the best strategy that you can actually apply so as to get to the correct answer. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now we are actually saying that the perfect answer in this regard is we are saying that our perfect answer is D. Okay, so now we said that our appropriate answer is going to be D. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, which is 1.1.2. It reads as follows. The dash is caused by changes in the building and construction industry. So now, if you check the key concept in this question, we have construction industry. And what is this industry? Industry here, we refer to a group of firms that sell the same product or group of firms that sell the same goods as well as services. So now if we check here, we have different types of business cycles. So now you should always understand the meaning of that business cycles. And before you can actually jump onto answers as well, you should always make sure that you know the concept when you read the question. Okay, right. So now the appropriate answer for this one, we have C. C is our appropriate answer. Guys, remember the types of business cycles, they normally depend on the number of years that the business or the economic activities normally fluctuate. So now, let me take you to these business cycles. What do we mean by a word or a phrase business cycles? Business cycles, we refer to fluctuations of the economic activities. So now, these economic activities, we check how long can they actually fluctuate. So now in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be C. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have in hand, we have 1.1.3. So now 1.1.3 reads as follows. The South African Reserve Bank uses dash as an instrument to maintain price stability. So it means that now the moment you are talking of South African Reserve Bank, you should take into account that South African Bank, it uses which policy, and under which policy, which instrument best works for South African Reserve Bank so as to stimulate the flow of goods and services. Guys, remember, if you take into account, most of the policies, they are needed because there will be fluctuations of the economic activities. So now once there are fluctuations of the economic activities, it's either the government can come into play to stimulate using the policy that is we call fiscal policy, and the instruments that they normally use there, they use taxation as well as the government spending. But now when it comes to South African Reserve Bank, we know that this is a reserve bank, and Reserve Bank normally it uses the policy that we call monetary policy, and this monetary policy uses different set of instruments, and the instruments that they normally use, they use money supply as well as the interest rate. So now remember, it will depend whether the economy has landed at growth or it has landed at boom. So now that is why now they will check which instrument should be much lessened and which instrument should actually be mostly applied. Okay, right. So now, as I said earlier, that you should always make sure that you use the elimination method whenever you are answering the questions under business studies. So now, if we check the given set of options, A is out, B is correct, C is out, D is out. So now our appropriate answer in this regard is going to be option B. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next option or the next question. The next question we have 1.1.4. 1.1.4 reads as follows. Reserve assets are recorded in the dash. So now let's talk of the word asset and let's talk of the word reserve. So now reserve, it means that you actually put aside, you don't actually use that asset at a moment. So now what do we mean by the asset? When you talk of the assets, we refer to possessions of the economy or possessions of the business. So now remember, these assets, they can either be the assets of a long term as well as the assets of a short term. So now the assets of a long term, in this regard, it can actually involve machinery, it can involve fitting and machinery as well, and as well as the buildings, the motor vehicles, and the likes. So now when it comes to the current ones, meaning the current ones they are the assets that can be possessed or that can be owned within a short period of time. So now these assets that we call them current, it means that we can actually say that debtors, we call them what? We call them the current assets. Because when we refer to debtors, we refer to those people who normally owe the business. Even though they owe us, they haven't paid the business. That money belongs to the business. They can pay that money within any short period of time. So now, grade 12s, remember when we talk of when we talk of the recording, we record. What do we record actually? We record the transactions. So now these transactions, we check the transactions that are international, meaning we check the flow of goods and services between the countries, which can actually be classified as bilateral trade. So now also we can actually record the transactions that take place amongst different set of countries, and in that regard, that particular type of trade, we call it multilateral trade. Okay, right. So now the recording here of the reserve assets, they can actually be recorded under financial account, yes. And then we check B, current account, no. Then we check C, capital transfer account, no. Then we check D, gold account, no. So now it means that this one of financial account is the one that is appropriate. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to 1.1.5. 1.1.5 reads as follows. The value of goods and services produced by a country during a financial year. During a financial year is known as dash income. So now if we check If we check the options given, remember grade 12s, I always tell you that you should always apply elimination method or elimination strategy whenever you are dealing with the questions that are in a multiple choice form. Okay, right. So now if we check here, domestic income is totally out, money income is totally out, but the correct option is national income, because also the government is totally out. So grade 12s, remember I told you that these options given, in most cases, they're pretty similar or pretty close to one another. And you should always make sure that you are careful whenever you attempt them. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. And this next question we have 1.1.6. So now 1.1.6 reads as follows. Which of the following is the responsibility of the local government? So now, local government, what do we mean by local government? And why in actually do we have local government? It means if you have local government, we still have other types of the government. And what do we mean by a word, government? When we talk of the government, we normally refer to bodies that provide the economy with public goods. Remember, public goods, in most cases, they don't have a price. They are free. They are free goods. In most cases, they are free goods. Unlike economic goods, where they normally have a price on them. So now, let's check different classification of the government. It says, and also, lastly, we have the local government. This one of local government takes into account the municipalities. Okay, right. So now, grade 12s, let's check the options given. The first option given, we have street lights. That one is the correct one. Then we have education. Education is far. And then we have army. Army is far. Then we have car license. Car license is far. So it means that now in this regard, our correct answer, it is going to be A. Okay. Now moving on to the next question, which is 1.1.7. 1.1.7 reads as follows. An increase in taxes will cause a decrease in debt. What do we mean by a tax? When we talk of a tax, we talk of a levy or a charge that the government normally apply on individual income or on business income, or they normally charge, or it's a levy on the investment that actually into place. Okay, right. So now, let's check the options given. Okay, remember, before we can actually go to the options given, this text, we have different classification of text. So now this text, we have what we have income tax. Income tax is the levy on what? On individual income. And also individual income, and we also have what? We also have company tax. And this company tax, it is actually a levy on business profits. Okay, right. So now, also, we should be in position to know the type of tax that is actually being applicable or used here in South Africa. Here in South Africa, the type of tax that they use what you call progressive tax. So now this progressive tax, it says what? It says the more you earn, the more you are taxed, or the lesser you earn, the lesser you are taxed. So now remember, the major essence of the government to apply tax, because from the start I said that the government, in order for them to stimulate the flow of goods and services, they apply what you call a fiscal policy. And this fiscal policy, it contains two instruments. One is what? One is taxes or taxation, and the other one is government spending. So now, these taxes, the government apply them whenever they want to stimulate the flow of goods and services. So now, right, grade 12s. So now, if we check them, they're saying that an increase in taxes will cause a decrease in debts. Tax collection is out. Consumption, yes. Consumption, yes. It is correct. So now, see, government revenues out and governmental expenditure is out. Why are we saying that an increase in taxes will cause a decrease in consumption? It is because the moment the government increases the percentage of the tax on the individual income, that is going to discourage the production of goods and services. Meaning, these individuals, they are going to be discouraged to undertake work or to render services. Why? Because now they will actually be what? Sweating for nothing. They will sweat too much. After sweating too much, much of their monies or much of their income now is going to be taken by the government. But it is the good one. It is the good strategy for the government to do that. But it is not advisable for the government always to put too much levy on what? On individual income. So let's check, why is it so important for the government always to charge this tax? It is so important because tax normally, it helps to what? To redistribute income from those who have a lot of wealth or money towards those who are poor, those who don't have. So in this regard, it means that the government will tax those people who are having a lot of money or a lot of assets, or those people who are wealthy, and then they are going to give to the poor. How do they give to the poor? In most cases, they give to the poor via what? Via capital transfer. So now this one of capital transfer or social grants. Here we refer to social grants, because remember, whenever we talk of a grant is the money that you receive without any job being done or any service actually being rendered. Okay, right. So now, as we said, grade 12, the appropriate answer for this section is going to be B. Okay. Yes, I would love to go deeper or go more under this concept, but for the sake of time, grade 12s, we shall discuss it as time lapses. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, we have 1.1.8. So now 1.1.8 grade 12s reads as follows. Changes in terms of trade signal changes in countries. So now let's check the terms of trade. What is this terms of trade? Terms of trade normally calls for what you call international trade. It means that here there is a flow, or there are flows of goods and services between countries or amongst the countries. So now if we check here, we have A, which is prices is out. We have inflation is out. We have wealth is out, but we have welfare. So in this regard, welfare, it is our appropriate answer for this question. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question, grade 12. The next question that we are moving to 1.2. So now 1.2 reads as follows. Choose a description from column B that matches the item in column A. Write only a letter in brackets. We're actually given an example how you can best approach this particular type of questions. So now grade 12, if you check this type of questions, they are somehow very tricky, even though they might look easy into your eyes, but in actual fact, they are not that much easy. Okay, right. So now let's check the concept under column A. Column A, in most cases, you are given the concept, while in column B, in most cases, you can be given the features, the characteristics, or the definitions, or the explanations, and the likes. So it means that you should be in the position to understand the concept deeply, because the moment you don't understand the concept deeply, in that regard, it is going to what? It is going to show you flames. Okay, right. So now let's check 1.2.1. So we have Keynesian approach. So now, who is this Keynesian? This Keynesian is the name of a person. And why are we saying the approach? It means it is his understanding towards the economics, because grade 12s, we have different set of theories under economics. It means that we have different views when we deal with economics. That is why our founder of economics, our father, which is Adam Smith, this father, for us, him as well, he does tolerate different set of approaches. Remember, Keynesian did approach or did give out his side of view or the story when it comes to the fluctuations of economic activities. So him is saying that if you want to avoid the fluctuations of economic activities, the market forces of demand and supply will make the economy to stabilize. We don't need the government. We don't need the government. And according to his approach, he's saying that in most cases, governments have the same what? Have the same name, which is corruption. So that is why he's saying that no. Whether the economy is at boom or the economy is at drought, meaning when the economy is at boom, it means that economic activities are doing very, very well. There is full employment. Many of the resources are being used. There's no there's no waste of resources, meaning there is efficiency, or resources actually are being used efficiently. So now this guy Keynesian is saying that no, we don't need government to step in when it comes to the flow of goods and services, or when it comes to the performance of the economic activities. So now, if we check the appropriate answer for this that is in line with Mr. Keynesian approach is E. That says a school of thought which believes the economy is best controlled by market forces. Which market forces? These market forces that we are referring to the level of demand and supply. What is demand and what is supply? When we talk of demand, we talk of the willingness and ability to buy goods and services. Then when it comes to supply we refer to what? We refer to the ability and willingness of businesses to sell goods and services. So meaning our appropriate answer in this regard, it is going to be A, meaning E here is our appropriate answer. Okay, right. So now guys, let's check our 1.2.2, the amplitude. So now what do we mean by this amplitude? When we talk of the amplitude, remember the amplitude, it does measure what? It does measure the distance from trough to trough and peak to peak. So now we must check the appropriate answer that is in line with that. This is just a measure. It is a measure. It's a tool that is actually being applied whenever they measure the flow of goods and services, or whenever they measure actually the performance of the economic activities. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be D. It measures the severity of the cyclical fluctuations. So in this regard, it means that our appropriate answer is going to be D. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next question, we have boom. What is this boom? Boom is a turning point of the business cycle. And this turning point of the business cycle, it does indicate that economic activities are performing very well. There is no wastage of resources. Resources are efficiently being utilized, or resources are efficiently been actually used. So now it means that in that particular economy, if the economic activities are at boom, that is the indication that there is full employment of resources. People are working. Businesses are making profit. The government is able to collect enough tax. And then people also, they are able to buy goods and services because the purchasing power is allowing them to buy whatsoever they desire with the money that they actually earn. So now the economic activities, they are not limited to what I actually mentioned. But for the sake of time, let me actually move on. So now our appropriate answer in this regard, we have C. So the C that says a period of rapid economic expansion, we have C. So meaning here, our appropriate answer is going to be C. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have what? We have treasury bills. So now what are these treasury bills? Treasury bills, normally we refer to what? We refer to short-term debt obligations that are normally inconsistent with the central government or the national government. So meaning in this regard, our appropriate answer, if we check there, it is what? It is A, meaning A in this regard is our appropriate answer. Okay, grade 12. Thanks. So now let's move on to the next question. So now we have balance of trade. So now the balance of trade here, what do we mean by this balance of trade? So now the balance of trade that we are referring to, we check the difference in value between a country's imports and exports of goods and services. Meaning this balance of trade, it does what? It does record the transaction pertaining to imports as well as exports. What do we mean by imports and what do we mean by exports? When we talk of the imports, we refer to goods and services that have been bought from other countries by local firms or local businesses or our local government. Then when it comes to the exports, we refer to goods and services that are locally produced and they're actually being sold to the rest of the of the world. So now in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be H. Okay, right, grade 12s. Thank you very much for understanding and listening and taking me up to this far. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.2.6. 1.2.6 reads as follows. Current prices. What are these current prices? So now when we talk of the current prices, in most cases, we check the actual values of goods and services. We check the current. What is this current? That's what we check. We check the actual one, the actual values of goods and services. So now let's check the appropriate answer for this. So now if we lay our eyes on that column B, we have what? We have F as our appropriate answer. So meaning in this regard, F is our appropriate answer. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 1.2.7. 1.2.7 says non-excludability. So non-excludability, this concept calls for what we call a public good. Remember, a public good, we said that a public good is a free good that can be used by anyone. And this public good that can be consumed by anyone. You can't exclude someone from using it. You can't stop someone from using it. That is why we are saying that there are non-excludability. Everyone can use the public good. Everyone can utilize a public good, whether you are a foreigner or you are a citizen. If there are parks there, you can't say that in this park, foreigners shouldn't come and sit in this park. No. Why? Because it's a public good. It's a free good that can be utilized by everyone. Now also let's check the tar roads. Tar roads also is a public good. So you can't say that the motor vehicle for foreigners shouldn't use a certain tar road. No, you can't exclude them. So also we can talk of the street lights. You can't say that since you're a foreigner, well, I shouldn't use these street lights. No, you can't exclude them. And we have different set of examples under this public good, and then you can't exclude someone from using or utilizing such commodities. Why? Because they are public ones. They are free. They don't have a price, just like economic goods. So now, in this regard, our appropriate answer, if you check our appropriate answer is I. It is almost impossible to prohibit any person from using the good. So meaning in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be I. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 1.2.8 that addresses the issue of globalization. What do you mean by globalization? Globalization is a linkage of what? It's a linkage of different set of countries coming together to perform a certain activity. Make an example of this. Different set of countries can come together to celebrate World AIDS Day. World AIDS Day, then the moment they come together, then that activity, we call it what? We call it globalization. Also, if they come to play Olympic Games, then also in that regard, we call it globalization. And also, if we have our Soccer World Cup, also Soccer World Cup can be classified as an activity that calls for globalization. So now let's check the appropriate answer for our 1.2.8. Our appropriate answer is G. That is as follows: increasing integration of economies around the world. So meaning here, in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be G. Okay, right, grade 12. So now we are done with this question. Let's move on to the next question. So now the next question, we are moving on to 1.3. 1.3 of all questions, it is somehow very tricky. Why are we saying 1.3 somehow it is very tricky? It is very tricky because it needs you to understand the content of economics. It needs you to have the content of economics. If you are used to memorizing concepts, when it comes to this question, it is not easy to master all of them if you are not well equipped with the concepts. Okay, right. So now let's check the question. Give one term for each of the following descriptions. Write only the term next to the question number. An example is given there. So we have 1.3.1 to 1.3.6 in the answer book. So abbreviations, acronyms, and examples will not be accepted. So it means that what they are saying, you shouldn't write GDP. GDP, if you write GDP, I put a cross. I don't even put half. I put a cross. Why a cross? Because it is specified amongst a set of instructions that you shouldn't write abbreviations, but you rather say gross domestic product. Okay, right. Great 12. So now let's move on to 1.3.1. 1.3.1 reads as follows: a reporting tool prescribed by the United Nations for countries to compile gross domestic product figures. This calls for systems of national accounts. Systems of national account. Systems of national account. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 1.3.2. 1.3.2 reads as follows: the type of business cycle where nominal GDP is adjusted for inflation. So now, if nominal GDP, it is adjusted for inflation, nominal, we check the current one. So the moment inflation is being adjusted, it means that calls for the real what? The real GDP. So meaning in this regard, we are going to have a real business cycles. Real business cycle. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, let's move on to the next question. Is 1.3.3. 1.3.3 reads as follows: payments by the government to suppliers that reduce their costs. Payments by the government to suppliers that reduce their costs. Reduce their costs, yes. So it means that this payment also, it should benefit consumers. It should benefit those who buy goods and services. And if we check into account, the business should always make sure that they minimize what? They minimize the cost. And then the government can also chip in to say that, okay, guys, since you are supposed to spend this much, but on behalf of consumers, let us pay this amount. So it means that this question calls for what we call a subsidy. What is a subsidy? A subsidy is a set of amount that the government pays to producers or suppliers or sellers of goods and services on behalf of the customers. So meaning in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be subsidies. Okay, right. I already explained what is the subsidies. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question, we have 1.3.4. 1.3.4 reads as follows: the ability of a country to produce greater quantity of a good or service with the same quantity of inputs per unit of time. So now remember, I have different set of we have absolute advantage, comparative. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be absolute advantage. Absolute advantage. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question says, state-owned enterprises that provide public goods and services. In most cases, state-owned here, we refer to what? We refer to those businesses where the government has some shares in them, where the government has some part of ownership in them. And in economic terms, such businesses, we call them parastatals. Call them parastatals. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 1.3.6. 1.3.6 reads as follows: the flow of income and expenditure between the participants in the economy. The flow of income between the participants in the economy. So now the flow, remember, I did explain, it was question 1, different set of flows. And I said that these flows normally, there are two. We have what? We have real flow as well as the money flow. And I said under real flow, we check the flow of goods and services as well as the flow of vectors of production. And we also have what we call money flow. Money flow, we check the flow of what? So we check the flow of income as well as the flow of expenditure or expenses. So now the appropriate answer for this question is going to be money flow. And remember, grade 12, this money flow, it does what? It does take the insight whenever you are drawing your what? Your circular flow model. And the outside part of it, that's where now we gauge what we call the real flow. So now as time lapses, when we get to such question, if any in this question paper, then I'll explain it further. Okay, right, grade 12. So now in this regard, we are done with our section. And then you have seen how best you can answer these questions. Remember, time is always very important, and you should always respect it. The time that is allocated in answering any set of questions, make sure that you utilize it. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now let's move on to the next question, grade 12s. So next question, grade 12s, we have section B. So section B, in section B, remember you are given you are given you are given 3 questions, and the expectation is to select 2. So now, okay, so let's check what we have in store. So we have 2.1. So 2.1 under question 2 says, answer the following questions. So now we have 2.1.1. So 2.1.1 reads as follows. Name 2 features of the expansionary phase in the business cycles. So now, what do we mean by expansionary phase? So now, guys, and this expansionary phase, it means expansionary phase, now the economy is taking off from the trough. It is now taking off from performing poor. The economic activities have been performing poor. Now they are what? They are taking off from performing poor towards performing better, or towards performing towards the boom. Okay, right, grade 12. So now here what we know here, the features can be an increase in GDP, or gross domestic product. Increase, same that here. Increase in gross domestic product. What are these? What do you mean by this gross domestic product? Now this is the second time coming across this phrase, or this abbreviation. Sorry. What does it mean? It means gross domestic product. Gross domestic product. We check what? We check the total monetary value of goods and services that have been produced within borders of a certain country. Then usually we check the time period of a year. Okay, right. So now again, we can say what? We can also say we have an increase in spending. But if you check, the question says that we should only give 1 point, and of which that 1 point, it does what? It does call for 2 marks. So now let's check. So also here we can say that we have what? We have inflation increase. Inflation increase. Okay, right, grade 12. What do we mean by inflation? And inflation, we refer to a persistent or continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question reads as follows. Why is parliamentary questioning on the main budget import so important? It is so important because it helps improve government policies, legislation, and public services. We are saying that this is important because it helps. It helps improve. It helps to improve government policies or governmental policies. Government policies, legislations, and public services. Okay, grade 12. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to the next question, which is question 2.2. So question 2.2 reads as follows. Study the diagram below and answer the questions that follow. So this is an example of a circular flow model. So circular flow model, if you check under circular flow model, we have vector market. Remember, I said the market is a platform where goods and services are being bought and sold. That is a market. But now, when it comes to vector market, it means now this is a platform where vectors of production are being bought and sold. Which vectors of production are we actually referring to? We are referring to capital, meaning here capital being what? Being sold and bought. Also, we refer to entrepreneurship. Also, we refer to land. Also, we refer to labor. And also, we have the households. What do we mean by household? Households, we refer to one person or group of individuals who are sharing the same living arrangement. So now here we have product market. Product market, remember, it's a platform where goods and services are being bought and sold. So here we have the firms. What do we mean by firms? Firms we refer to entities that are being established with the aim of making profit. So now let's check the government. The government normally we refer to bodies that normally provide with public good. Why am I saying bodies? Because the government comprises of different set of bodies. Under government, I know most of you grade 12s, you think when you talk of the government, we only refer to politicians. Politicians, they are one of the bodies that would form what do you call the government. Meaning under government, number one, we have politicians. Number two, we have societies. We also have bureaucrats under government. They also take part as the government. But in most cases, because the politicians are the ones who are occupying the driver's seat of this vehicle or this government, we think that when we talk of the government, we refer to them. No, actually not. We have different set of bodies. Okay, let's check grade 12. So now we have financial institutions. Financial institutions that we refer to those institutions that are actually credit providers. So these ones, they are those ones who are dealing with money. These are the businesses or institutions that deal with money, such as banks and the likes, the insurances and the likes. Okay, right. So now grade 12s, as I said earlier, that when we talk of this, when we talk of this circular flow model, and then I said the outside part represent the real flow, while the inside part represent what? It represent the money flow. So now here, remember, we are saying that the households, they are the primary what? They are the primary participants under the circular flow model, because they are the ones normally who are selling what? Who are selling the vectors of production to businesses. So now businesses can be in the position to produce goods and services. So whenever the households sell their vectors of production to businesses, businesses then in that regard, they are going to reward or compensate the households with an income. Okay, right. So now let's move on grade 12. So grade 12s, moving on, we have 2.2.1. So now 2.2.1 reads as follows. Identify the participant that uses the vectors of production to produce goods and services. Grade 12s, remember I said that whenever you're dealing with the questions under economics or under any paper, it can be economics, it can be business studies and the likes. Make sure when the question says identify, this action verb should be taken into account. The moment it says identify, the expectation is just to pick the answer from the given set of diagram, or to pick the answer from the given set of cartoon, or to pick the answer from the given set of scenario. So in this regard, our appropriate answer is going to be firms. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question, we have 2.2.2. So now 2.2.2 reads as follows. Through which market will goods and payment for goods and services do flow? They do flow under that what we call the product market. Remember, I've already explained this product market. I said product market is a market where goods and services are being bought and sold. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 2.2.3. Briefly describe the term goods market. So now goods market, remember goods market is more or less the same with the product market. So meaning here under goods market, we specifically refer to what? Refer to those tangible items that businesses are selling. So now here we talk of the platform where buyers and sellers of goods meet for potential transactions. So we're actually saying that this is a platform where buyers and sellers of goods made for potential transactions. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have 2.2.4. And our 2.2.4 reads as follows. How does the government reuse economic activities in the circular flow? So remember, these economic activities and the economics, I told you that we check the level of employment. We also check if businesses are making profit. We also check the performance of the imports, also check the performance of the exports, also check the level of consumption by the household. Are they able to buy goods and services? Are they not poor? Are they poor? And the likes. Also check the different set of investments. Either it can be local investment or foreign investment. So those are the economic activities that you're actually referring to. So what about the circular flow? The circular flow, we check the flow of income, we also check the flow of what? Expenditures, we also check the flow of production. That is actually taking place amongst the different set of market participants or decision makers. Okay, right. So now in this regard, the question wants us to what? To check or take into account how the government reuse economic activities in the circular flow model. So in this regard, the government normally they put what you call the surplus that will lead to less spending in the economy. So now here we're saying that the government budget surplus that will lead to less spending in the economy. In the economy. Okay, right, grade 12. So now at this juncture, we have actually pushed. So now let's move on to 2.2.5. 2.2.5 reads as follows. Explain the impact on the circular flow if leakages are greater than injections. What do we mean by leakages? When we talk of the leakages, we check the goods and services, or we check the outflow of money. The outflow of money, the money that goes out of the pool of collection. Then when we talk of the injections, we check the inflow of money, or the money that comes into the economy. Okay, right. So now the question says what? We want to give the impact. So now if the question says impact, let's remember we can either take into account the bad side or the good side. So now here the marks allocation is 4. It means that the expectation is to come up with 2 points. So now leakages reduce the flow of income in an economy. Why are we saying that? Because when you talk of the leakages, we refer to the flow of money that is going out of the economy. Meaning leakages, we refer to what? Outflow of money. That is why we are saying that leakages reduce the flow of income in an economy. Leakages reduce the flow of income in an economy. Okay, right. So now since we have 4 marks, the expectation is to come up with how many marks? How many points? 2 points. So now also we can say there will be less funds available for economic activities, which leads to national income decreasing. What do you mean by national income? That is an income for the country. So now we are saying that there will be less funds available for economic activities, which leads to national income decrease. Okay, grade 12. So now we are done with 2.5. So now let's move on to the next question. And the next question that we are faced with, question 2.3. Oh, so now question 2.3, I love it with all my heart because it addresses the issue of what we call Forex. So study the graph below and answer the questions that follow. So now, guys, remember, you should be in the position to understand the graph. The language should always be clear. So now, in this regard, when we talk of the exchange rate, we check we check the matching of different set of currencies. So now, in this regard, it means that now a rand is actually being matched with a dollar. So now, if a rand is being matched with a dollar, then we can actually read and understand the questions that follow. So now, if we check, we have a different set of diagrams there, or different set of curves. So now this curve, this one that is upward sloping, it's a supply curve. And why is the supply curve upward sloping? The supply curve is upward sloping because it obeys the law of supply. What does the law of supply state? The law of supply states that the higher the price, and then also the higher the quantity. That's the law of supply. But now this diagram, or this graph that is facing down, we call it demand curve. And then the demand curve is downward sloping. Why is it downward sloping? Because there is an inverse relationship between demand and the price. So meaning here, if the prices of goods and services, or the prices of a dollar is high, then it means the quantity is going to be low. But if the price is low, then the quantity is going to be high. Unlike the supply. The supply, if the price is high, also the quantity is going to be very high according to the law. Okay, right. Surely grade 12, you did understand me very well when I was addressing these laws, because I know most of you grade 12s, you normally miss a point because you don't understand how this concept normally flow or operate. So I said that the supply curve is upward sloping because it does obey the law of supply. And the law of supply states that there is a positive relationship between the price and the quantity. If the price is high, also the quantity is going to be high. Then reverse is the case. But now when it comes to demand curve is downward sloping because it obeys the law of demand. What does the law of demand say? The law of demand says that there is an inverse or negative relationship between the price as well as the quantity. If the price is high, then the quantity is going to be low. Then if the price is low, then the quantity is going to be high. So that is why we actually see the graphs behaving the way they behave. So now if we check the demand curve, we have D, which is the first demand curve, and the second demand curve, we have D1. So it means there is a rightward shift, meaning demand curve has shifted from D to D1. There should be a reason for a demand curve to shift. What can be the influence? There are different set of influences that can make the demand curve to shift. Okay, right. So now let's check the first question that goes, which is 2.3.1. Name one exchange rate system. Remember, guys, we know we have different types of exchange rate system. We have the exchange rate system where it is actually being managed, meaning we have managed exchange rate system. We also have what? Fixed floating, free floating exchange rate system. We also have fixed managed exchange rate system. Okay, right. So now we're actually saying that we have one. So now one we can just select from the three that I gave. So we can just say, okay, let's take what? Let's take managed. Managed exchange rate system. So, okay, right, grade 12. Remember I said we have three types here. We have managed exchange rate system, we have free floating exchange rate system, we also have fixed managed exchange rate system. Okay, right. So now grade 12, let's move on to the next question. The next question reads as follows: 2.3.2. Give one reason for the shift of the demand curve above. Demand curve can shift because there is an increase in terms of payments from imports of goods from the United States of America. Also, it can shift because there is an increase for payments when it comes to services from United States of America. Also, you can actually say that there is increased spending of South Africa tourists in the United States of America. And also, we can actually say that South Africans buying shares in the United States of America actually increased. Okay, right. So now, since we have 1 point here, we can just say that we have increased payments for services from the United States of America. Why United States of America? Because a dollar in most cases, it does come from or belong to the United States of America. There is a currency for United States of America. So now, why are we saying South Africa? It is because rand also is a currency for South Africa. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question that reads 2.3.3. Briefly describe the term foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is the conversion of one currency or one country's currency into another. So now we are saying that this is the conversion, saying that this is nothing but the conversion. This is the conversion of one currency of one country's currency into another. Okay, grade 12. So now we are done with this question. Let's move on to the next one, which is 2.3.4. Explain the value of the rand against the dollar after shift in the demand curve in the graph above. So now, if we check the graph above, we should check the graph above. The question says that we must explain the value of the rand against the value of the dollar after the shift in the graph above. So if we check there, we have the rand, and the rand has actually decreased in the value against the dollar, and also the rand has depreciated against the dollar. So in this regard, we are saying that we have what? We have the rand has decreased in value against the dollar. Against the dollar. Let's check. So now here we have what? We have rent, and then we have rent here. It means now rent is now weak. It's now weak. We need more of the rents now to buy a dollar. That is why we are saying that a rent has what? A rent has actually depreciated. Because now if we used to buy $1 with 15 rand 20 cents, then now after the shift, we are now forced to buy it with 15.50. It means that now rand is weak. We need more of the rents to buy $1. That's what it means. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we have what? The next question we have 2.3.5. 2.3.5 reads as follows. How can an appreciation of a currency be negative to a country? What do we mean by appreciation? Appreciation is when a currency gain value or become more stronger compared to other currency. So now let's check the points. We are expected to give 2 points. So it means that currency appreciation may increase export expenses. And also, this situation can drastically cause a country's gross domestic product to actually decrease. So now we are saying that here, we are saying that the currency appreciation, may increase export expenses. And also we said that this situation can drastically cause a country's GDP to decrease. Okay, right. Grade 12s. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now let's move on to what long questions. We have question 2.4. 2.4 says, briefly discuss the trend line and extrapolation as features used in the forecasting of the business cycle. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's check here. What do we mean by the trend line? What do we mean by extrapolation? What do we mean by forecasting? Hey, forecasting is when we predict about future. We predict about future economic activities. We check how future activities are going to behave. Okay, so now we check of the extrapolation. So now what do we mean by extrapolation? Extrapolation is when now this prediction, it is used based on what? Based on the historical data. So now we also have the trend line, and where the trend line normally indicate the general direction of the economy. Okay, right. So now we are saying that the trend line does indicate a general direction of a country's economy. And also the trend line, most countries have a positive slope over time, indicating a growing economy. Okay, grade 12. So now let's move on to extrapolation. Extrapolation. Remember we said that extrapolation means to estimate future events from history data or known data. Oh, you're right. And also, this extrapolation plays a role. Players use extrapolation to make predictions about the economy that are based on data and not opinion. Okay, right. So at this juncture, grade 12, now we have answered the question regarding the extrapolation as well as the trend line. Okay, right. So another thing, this trend line in most cases, it does measure the long-term economic growth. What do you mean by economic growth? Economic growth, we check the improvement of businesses in terms of production of goods and services. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 2.5 grade 12. It reads as follows. How can efficiency of inputs be used in the supply side policies so as to improve the economy? What do you mean by efficiency under economics? Under economics, when you talk of efficiency, we check the non-wastage of resources. Resources are fully employed. There's no waste of resources. So the inputs that we are referring to in this regard, we are referring to the vectors of production, because now vectors of production, they are called vectors of production because those are the inputs that are necessarily needed by businesses so as to produce goods and services. Okay, right. So it means that vectors of production, they are the core engine of businesses, because without vectors of production, no processing of goods or manufacturing of goods and services can actually take place. Okay, right. So now read and continue. So now we are saying that how can efficiency of inputs be used in the supply side policies to improve the economy? So now inputs refer to all the costs involved in the production of goods and services. So when inputs are used more efficiently, the production costs of the producers will decrease. And also when we check, taxes must be fair for businesses to be encouraged to produce high levels of production. So as well, individuals become motivated to work when taxes are fair, which could lead to higher productivity levels. Productivity levels will refer to individual production of goods and services. Okay, right, grade 12. So now we're saying that the inputs, refer to all the costs involved in the production of goods and services. Okay, right. So now, secondly, said that when inputs, remember these inputs, we refer to vectors of production. When inputs are used more efficiently, the production cost of the producers will decrease. Oh, you're right, grade 12. So now also we're saying that taxes must be fair. For businesses should be encouraged to produce higher levels of production. Also, we said that individual income motivated individual become motivated to work. Why? Because now the tax charge is low. When taxes are fair, meaning the levy or the percentage is not that much, and which could lead to higher to higher productivity levels. Productivity levels. So you're saying that individual income motivated, individuals become motivated to work when taxes are fair, which could lead to higher productivity levels. So now, grade 12 at this juncture, we are actually done with our question 2. So now let's move on to question what? Question of 3. Move on to question 3. Remember, under these questions, the expectation is to always make sure that whenever you attempt this set of questions, you base yourself with the time allocated as well as the marks allocated. I know some of you guys, what makes you sometimes to underperform is because in most cases, you pay less attention towards the allocation of marks as well as the time allocated to answer that particular set of questions. Okay, right. So now answer the following questions, which is under 3.1. So now let's check 3.1.1. Name any 2 sub-accounts in financial account. So now we have net direct investment as well as the financial derivatives. We have net direct investment as well as net portfolio investment. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. Next question we have 3.1.2. So now 3.1.2 reads as follows. How is national income determined in the 4-sector economy? In the 4-sector economy, we have 4 markets, and also have 4 market participants or 4 decision makers. So now the national income is calculated by adding the contribution of each sector to national income. Also, it includes the consumption levels of households, investment spending of households, government spending, as well as net trade between countries or imports. So now, in short, here we have what? In short, we have national income. National income normally is equivalent to consumption by household plus investment by businesses plus government spending as well as plus net exports. So now this is what we are actually referring to. So now we are saying that the national income is calculated by adding the contribution of each sector to the national income. It includes consumption level by household, consumption levels by households, consumption level of households, and also investment spending of businesses, also government spending, and trade, net trade between countries. Net trade, we talk of exports or imports versus exports. So in a mathematical notation, when we talk of the calculation of the national income, we say that Y, which denotes national income, is equivalent or equal to consumption by the household plus investment by different set of businesses plus government spending plus net exports. This is the mathematical formula to calculate our national income. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. We have Phillips cave. Remember, Mr. Philip. Philip is the name of a person. And now this gentleman, he is actually exercising his understanding or his approach when it comes to the inflation as well as unemployment. So he addresses only the issue of inflation as well as unemployment. For him, is saying that if the level of inflation is high, that is going to cause a decrease in the level of unemployment. That is why when you check the graph here, the more we have higher numbers of inflation, then the unemployment is going to be very low. That is his approach. And also he's saying that the moment we have lesser or lower inflation, then that one on its own, it is going to call for higher unemployment. So now that is his approach when it comes to the inflation as well as unemployment. Okay, right. So now let's check 3.2.1, what it does have in store for us. What is the natural rate of unemployment according to the graph above? So the natural rate of unemployment that we have what? We have 11%. So now this 11% is the natural natural rate of unemployment. Okay, right, grade 12. So meaning here, our answer here is going to be 11%. Remember, I did explain the meaning of a word inflation. I did say that whenever we talk of inflation, we talk of the persistent increase or general increase in the price level or in the general price level of goods and services. So now when we talk of unemployment, we refer to individuals who have been looking for a job for the past 7 days. Who have been looking for a job for the past 7 days, and they form part of the workforce. Remember, in South Africa, the workforce normally starts from 16 to 64. But now, if you are just sitting there behind the shops, busy doing your stuff, you're not looking for any particular job, and then you have qualifications, in that regard, you're not unemployed. You can't be classifying you as someone who is unemployed. Why? Because you haven't been looking for a job. Okay, right. So now, for the sake of time, grade 12s, let me move on to the next question. So now the next question we have what? The next question we have 3.2.2. 3.2.2 reads as follows. Name one supply side measure that can be applied to shift the demand curve. So now, the one supply measure that we can actually refer to is that improved education. We have improved education. Improved education. Improved education. If your education is improved, then the supply can actually shift. So now also we can check what skills training can also play part there. If the individuals are being given that platform to enhance the level of skills that they possess, also in that regard, that is going to cause the supply curve to shift. And also if you check what the skills development in seminar, also it can actually play a crucial role in terms of shifting the supply curve. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question reads 3.2.3. Briefly describe the term natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment refers to the rate of unemployment that is merged with a steady inflation rate. So now we're saying that this one we refer to what? We refer to the rate of unemployment that is merged with a steady inflation rate. That is merged with a steady inflation rate. Okay, right, grade 12s. So now, grade 12s, at this juncture now, we have completed some few questions. Let's move on to 3.2.4. So 3.2.4 reads as follows. How would trade unions react if the Phillips curve moves from point A to point B? How will they react? So trade unions in this regard, they will demand higher wages because the cost of living has actually increased. What would have pushed the cost of living to increase the inflation rate? Okay, right. So now we are saying that in this regard, the trade unions will demand. Remember, I explained the word demand. Demand higher wages or higher pays. Higher wages because now the cost of living has increased. Why cost of living increased? Because now, because of the inflation, prices of goods and services, they have increased. So now if prices of goods and services have increased, even now, whatsoever salary, whatsoever wage that individuals earn also should increase. Why? Because if prices of goods and services have increased, that will leave the buyer or the customer also to up his or game when it comes to the purchasing power. The purchasing power should also be high so that they can keep up with the prices of goods and services. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 3.2.5. 3.2.5 reads as follows. How can provision of infrastructural services by government reduce the cost of doing business? So in this regard, the government provides funding for infrastructure. For example, we have roads, traffic lights, railways, and the likes. Also, if this infrastructure is not reliable or maintained, it becomes difficult for businesses to achieve higher productivity rates. Why? Because now, for them to go and buy or transport their supply, to transport their goods and services, it is going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. Remember, for businesses to be able to process goods and services, they should always buy their inputs. So now to buy the inputs, sometimes they need to travel or use transportation. So now if the roads or the railways are not fine, it means that is going to pose a challenge for businesses to actually be in the position to meet up with their suppliers so as to be able to buy the vectors of production for processing purposes. Okay, right. So now we're saying that the government provides funding for infrastructure, e.g., we have roads and the likes. And the second one, we are saying that if this infrastructure is not reliable, or maintained. Remember, hey, there are a lot of roads with potholes. Hey, they are not maintained. It becomes difficult for businesses to achieve higher productivity rates. Okay, grade 12. So now, let's move on to the next question. So now the next question we have question 3.3. So 3.3 reads as follows. Study the cartoon video and answer the questions that follow. So now you read the cartoon, you check what is going on the cartoon. Then from there, we deal with the questions that follow. Then the first question says, what is the net international benchmark public debt percentage GDP ratio? So now it is given there as how much as 60%. Okay, right. So moving on, we move on to the next question. The next question we have 3.3.2. List one example of community good. Community good here we can talk of what? Street lights, can also talk of traffic lights and the likes. So now here we are saying that we have what? We have street lights. An example. So briefly describe the term full employment. Full employment is a situation where all people who are available and searching for work can find a job at the prevailing remuneration rates and conditions. We are saying that this is nothing but situation where all people who are available and searching for work can find a job at the prevailing remuneration rates and conditions. Okay, right, grade 12. So now moving on to 3.3.4. How can the progressive tax system affect the redistribution of wealth in South Africa? Remember I said it in South Africa, normally you see some progressive tax to make sure that they redistribute income from those who are earning a lot towards those who are poor. So now it means that this progressive one, it says that the more you earn, the more you are taxed. Okay, right, grade 12. So now this can actually be used to redistribute income from those of higher income earners towards those of lower income earners by disproportionately taxing higher incomes. Also, the higher tax share of those who are wealthier will result in an increased income share to the low income earners. Okay, right. So now we're saying that the higher tax share of those who are wealthier will result in an increased income. Increased income share to the low income earners. Okay, right. So now let's move on to the next question, grade 12. The next question we have 3.3.5. So 3.3.5 reads as follows. Analyze the cartoon and state what impact the situation will have on the main budget. So now when you analyze the cartoon, when you check the cartoon, grade 12, let's check this cartoon. When we check this cartoon, we observe that it indicates that the current taxpayers of 5.8% is totally inadequate for government expenditure. Also, if you check, the revenue that will be collected from the small base of taxpayers cannot sustain all the responsibilities in providing for the nation. Okay, right. So now let's write the points that we have observed from the cartoon. So we are saying that from this cartoon, we observed that the current taxpayers which is 5.8%, is totally inadequate. It's totally not enough for government expenditure. Government expenditure. And then goes off 4 marks, then 2 points. Also said that the revenues that will be collected from the small base of taxpayers cannot sustain all the responsibilities in providing for the nation. Okay, right. So now grade 12s at this level, now we have landed on question 3.4. Okay, right. So now if we check 3.4 says discuss export promotion and import control as measures used to correct the balance of payment. So now under export promotion, we can actually say that imports will be discouraged as more locally produced goods are normally taken into account. And also Now, if we check, the export promotion can be used to ensure that more goods and services are locally produced. So we are saying that, saying export promotion so we are saying that imports will be discouraged as more locally produced locally goods or local goods are produced. Correct, as more local goods are produced. As more local goods are produced. Okay, right. So now, we also said that export promotion can be used to ensure that more goods and services are locally produced. Good. So now let's check on the side of import promotion. Saying that under import promotion, this one, they include import tariffs, other duties, and quotas. They include import tariffs, other duties, and quotas. Again, import controls measures to discourage the import of certain goods and services. Okay, right. So now we move on to question 3.5. 3.5 reads as follows. Why is it so important to calculate the real GDP? It is so important to calculate the real GDP because this is going to be what the growth rate of the real GDP is often used as an indicator of the general health of the economy. Also, GDP is important because it gives information about the size of the economy and how an economy is performing. Also, in the same manner, real GDP makes comparing GDP from year to year and from different years more meaningful because it shows comparisons for both the quantity as well as the value of goods and services. In the same manner, real GDP also measures an economy's total goods and services in a given year, taking into account different set of changes in price levels. Okay, right. Saying that GDP is important because it is so important because it gives information about the size of the economy and how an economy is performing. Also, the growth rate of real GDP is often used as an indicator of the general health of the economy. And again, the saying that GDP is so important because it gives information about the size. But the size also, we mentioned the growth rate. And then also, let's check in broad terms. An increase in GDP, real GDP, an increase in real GDP. Is interpreted as a sign that the economy is doing well. And lastly, real GDP measures an economy's total. Real GDP measures an economy's total goods and services in a given year, taking into account changes in the price levels. Okay, right. So now, grade 12s at this juncture, we are done with our question 3. Now let's move on to question 4. Okay, grade 12s. We have now landed on question 4. Okay, right. So now let's check 4.1. 4.1 reads as follows. Answer the following questions. So now under 4.1, we have 2 sub questions, which is 4.1.1 as well as 4.1.2. Okay, right. So now 4.1.1 goes as follows. Name 2 transactions in the capital transfer account. So now what is this capital transfer account? Capital transfer account is the account that records the transactions pertaining to fixed assets. So now these are transactions. They are transactions that are taking place between or amongst a different set of countries. Okay, right. So now the transactions that are actually appearing here. We said that we have debt forgiveness. We also have grants relating to the ownership of fixed assets. We also have financial claims and liabilities from migrants. Okay, right. So now we're saying that we have debt forgiveness, debt forgiveness, forgiveness. And then we also have financial claims. Financial claims and liabilities from migrants. Okay, right. Why are we giving 2 points? Because the question is so clear. The expectation is to give up 2 points of each question, or each point carries 1 mark. Okay, right. So now, grade 12, let's move on to the next question. The next question is 4.1.2. So it reads as follows: why must the government conserve and preserve resources? So that there are different set of reasons why the government can actually conserve and preserve resources. One of the reasons is that the government protects resources so as to ensure sustainability of those resources. On the other hand, there are, for example, laws against the poaching of rhino race and abalone, as this species may become extinct if they are not protected. And again, the government conserves resources so as to ensure less expenditure in spend or recovering the resources. So now, if we check the marks allocated, the expectation is to come up with 1 point. So now we're saying that the government protects resources so as to ensure sustainability of those resources. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. And the next question that we are moving on to is question 4.2. And 4.2 reads as follows: study the graph below and answer the questions that follow. If you check, this actually it's a multiplier, and you should know what this multiplier is. So when we talk of multiplier in simple terms, multiplier will refer to changes in national income brought by a change in leakages as well as injections. So now, let's check the questions that follow after this multiplier. But you should be in the position to know the meaning of all of these curves, as well as the axis given. So now, in most cases, whenever you are dealing with the multiplier, on the y-axis, we are always given income as well as expenditures on the x-axis. Okay, right. So now let's check 4.2.1. 4.2.1 reads as follows: identify the number of participants represented in the multiplier model above. So remember, grade 12, whenever the question says identify, the expectation is just to go to the given scenario, or go to the given diagram, or go to the given cartoon, and you just pick the answer from there. There's no need for you to think. Okay, that is why in most cases I encourage grade 12s to always pay attention to action verbs, because action verbs normally are the ones that will give you a lead on how best you can approach a question. Okay, right. So now, if we identify the number of participants represented in the multiplier model above, how many are they? There are 3. So meaning here we have 3 participants. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question that we have, or we are faced with, is question 4.2.2. 2. And this question reads as follows. What is the purpose of the 45 degrees line in the graph? The purpose of this graph, or the purpose of this decrease, is actually for equality line, or the line where income and expenditure are supposed to be equal. If we check here on the graph, if we check here, you see that this divides our plane into two equal parts. So now if we check that part, or that side is the same as this one. That is why we are saying that this is nothing but equality line, or the line where income and expenditure are actually equal. So now we are saying that this is equality line. This is equality line. Okay, great. So now let's move on to the next question. The next question we are faced with 4.2.3. So now 4.2.3, it reads as follows. Briefly describe the term marginal propensity to save. So in most cases, I know when it comes to marginal propensity to save, as well as marginal propensity to consume, most of the grade 12s, I know it is somehow very difficult for them to actually differentiate the two. And also it is somehow not easy for them to actually come up with the correct definition. Okay, I'll first discuss the issue of the marginal propensity to consume. So now when we talk of the marginal propensity to consume, we talk of the additional income that household choose to spend on buying goods and services. That is the meaning of marginal propensity to consume. Additional income that household choose to spend on buying goods and services. But now, when it comes to marginal propensity to save, this is an additional income that household plan to save instead of spending it on buying goods and services. That is why we can actually say that this is nothing but the portion of additional income that household choose to save for future uncertainties. Okay, right. We are saying that this is nothing but the portion of additional income. Portion of additional income that households choose to save. Okay, right, great talks. So now let's move on to the next question. And the next question that we are faced with, we have 4.2.4, and it reads as follows. How can a negative multiplier occur in the circular flow model? Remember, great talks, I always tell you that whenever you are dealing with any question, make sure that you identify the keywords. And the keywords are the ones that are going to alert you. So now in this regard, it means that the keywords that we have the word multiplier, we also have a phrase circular flow. So now multiplier, remember I said whenever we talk of the multiplier, we refer to changes in national income brought by the change in either leakages or injections. Okay, right. So now when we talk of the circular flow model is nothing but the model that shows the flow of our production, or that shows also the flow of expenditure, that also shows the flow of income amongst the different set of decision makers, or among different set of market participants. And these market participants or the decision makers that you are actually referring to, we are referring to household, we are referring to firms, we are referring to government, as well as the foreign sector. Okay, right. So now the negative multiplier effect occurs when an initial withdrawal or leakages of spending from the circular flow leads to knockoff effects and a bigger final drop in real GDP. I'll come again. The negative multiplier effect occurs when an initial withdrawal or leakage of spending from the circular flow leads to knock-on effects and bigger final drop in our real GDP. Remember, when we talk of our real GDP, we refer to what? We refer to the GDP where inflation has been actually catered for. Remember, we have our nominal GDP, and nominal GDP, we just check the current figure where the inflation is not actually catered for. And also remember the word or GDP GDP is what? A gross domestic product. And this gross domestic product, we refer to monetary value of goods and services that have been produced within borders of a particular country. And usually we check the time period of a year or 12 months. Okay, so now we're saying that the negative effect, saying the negative multiplier effect occurs when an initial withdrawal or leakage of spending from the circular flow leads to knock-on effects and a bigger final draw in real GDP. Okay, right, great house. So now we are done with our question 4.2.24. So now let's actually move on to the next question, which is 4.2.5. So now this question reads as follows. Calculate the multiplier from the information provided in the graph above. So great to have. Remember, whenever you calculate the multiplier, you should be in the position to know the formula that you are going to use. In this regard, the formula that we are going to use, we are going to check out, and then we say that the multiplier is equivalent to a change in income brought by also or divided by a change in aggregate demand or expenditure. So now we can also write it in words. Change in income divided by change in total expenditure. Okay, right. So now, if we check the changes that we have, let's check from the graph the changes that we have, especially when it comes to the issue of income. The changes that we have, here we have what? We have 400, also we have 1,000. It means that the change is from 400 to 1,000. And also when it comes to the side of the expenditure, our change is from 300 to 600. So in this regard, we are going to check the difference between the first income as well as the second income. Also, we are going to check the difference between the first expenditure as well as the second expenditure. So in this regard, when we substitute, we are actually going to say 400 because this is the initial income. So now we subtract what the second income, then we divide by 300 because 300 is our initial expenditure. Then the second expenditure, we have 600. So now when we calculate, then we are left with negative 600 divided by negative 300. Remember, grade 12's maths in maths. Negative divided by negative normally gives us a positive. So now in this regard, we have positive because now we are going to have negative divided by negative. So negative divided by negative is positive. That is not me, but it's the rule of mathematics. It is like that. So in this regard, 300 divided by 600, then we are left with 200. So I mean 2. So now this 2, it is our multiplier. So this is what the question actually needed us to calculate. So now also grade 12s, when you are dealing with economics, you should be equipped with basics of pure maths. Yeah, you should be equipped with basics of pure maths. And also you should be sharp when it comes to mathematics, because economics somehow is part of science subjects, even though it does fall under commercials, but in actual fact, you should be equipped with pure maths. Okay, right, grade 12. So now, let's move on to the next question. The next question, we have 4.3. And 4.3 reads as follows. Study the information below and answer the questions that follow. So now we are given the table there. So now we have to study the table given. We have composite business cycle indicators for South Africa. So now I will explain the composite, and also I will explain the business cycle. Also, I will explain the word indicators. So now when we talk of the word indicators under economics, we refer to a sign that shows where the economy is actually heading. This is a sign, and this sign is the one that will give us a lead on the performance of our economy. So now when it comes to the definition or the meaning of business cycle, when we talk of business cycle, we refer to the fluctuations of economic activities, or the upswings and downswings of economic activities. So now when we talk of composite indicator, we normally refer to what? We normally refer to a combination of different set of indicators. Okay, right. So now here we are given what? We are given the indices for 2015, and also we are having leading indicator, and also we are having 12-month percentage change. And if we check here, we are also given what? We are also given the figures per each month. We have figures for May, figures for April, up until figures for November. Okay, right. So now the first question under 4.3, which is 4.3.1, reads as follows. Name one example of leading economic indicator. Remember, I said whenever we talk of an indicator, we refer to a sign that can actually show us where the economy is actually heading. So now we are having a leading indicator. A leading indicator, this is what the indicator that changes before the economy can actually change. It means this one is the one that is actually leading us. That is why we are saying that it is a sign that changes before the economy can actually change. So now they need us to give a different set of examples. So now we have a different set of these examples. Even though the question needs us to give one, I'll try by all means to give as many as possible. So now number one, you can say the number of new vehicles sold. Number of new vehicles sold can be an example of leading indicator. Also, we can talk of the number of building plans approved, can also be an example of leading indicator. Also, we can refer to the job advertising space used by job advertisements, also can be one of the examples. So now here we're actually saying that we have what? The number of new vehicles. Number of new vehicles. Number of new vehicles sold. So 1 point because of 1 mark. So now let's move on to the next question, which is 4.3.2. So 4.3.2, it reads as follows. Which economic indicator confirms the behavior of a coincident indicator? What is this coincident indicator? This is the indicator, or this is the sign that changes together with the economy. When the economy changes, also this sign or this indicator as well changes. So meaning here, an example can be what? Can be lagging indicator. Our example in this regard can be what? A lagging indicator. Lagging indicator. Okay, great, Charles, fine. Let's now move on to the next question. The next question that we are faced with, 4.3.3. So 4.3.3 reads as follows. Briefly describe the term composite indicator. I did explain it when I was explaining the table. I said composite indicator, as the word goes composite, it means here we check what? We check the combination of different set of indicators. In short, this is a summary of the various indicators of the same type into a single value. Saying that this is the summary. This is nothing but the summary. This is the summary of the various indicators, various indicators of the same type, into a single value. Okay, great job. So now we are done with our 3.3. So now let's jump on to 4.3.4. So 4.3.4 reads as follows. Explain the effect of government spending during a recession in the business cycle. So now, guys, remember, in the business cycle, our business cycle normally it looks like this. We'll be having, and this is our trend line. This is our trend line. So this is our peak. This is our turning point truth. This is our turning point peak. So now here is where we have recession. Meaning this recession is before the crossing of the trend line. And remember, the trend line, this is the line that measures the long-term economic growth. And this long-term economic growth, or economic growth in short, we refer to improvement of businesses in terms of the production of goods and services. Okay, right. So now let's explain. When we explain, increased government spending raises aggregate demand and increases consumption, which leads to increased production and faster recovery from recession. We are saying that increased government spending raises aggregate demand and increases consumption, which leads to increased production and faster recovery from recession. Okay, right. So now we are saying increased government spending, raises aggregate demand. Aggregate demand and increases consumption. And increases consumption and faster recovery from recession. Okay, right. So now, grade 12s, at this juncture now we are done, or we are actually completed our 4.3.4. So now let's land on to 4.3.5. So now 4.3.5 reads as follows. Calculate the first 6 months moving average. So now 6 months moving average for the leading economic indicator. What is this moving average? Moving average is a concept that we use to predict the future events, but using the current data. So now in this regard, when we calculate our moving average, we are actually going to check what? We are going to check the figures for March. Also, we are going to check for April, and also we are going to check for May, and also we are going to check for June. Also, we are going to check for July, and also we are going to check for August. So now from there, then we divide the sum of them with 6. So now it means that we are going to check this one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now you will add them, and you add this one, you add, then divide by 6. Okay, right. So now we are saying that we have 127.3 plus 133.3 plus 136.2 plus 130.2 plus 127.0 plus 127.9. So now all of this, then you divide by 6. So now here, the sum of this is going to be 781.9 divided by 6. So now our final answer is going to be 130.31. Okay, grade 12. So this was what the question wanted you to actually come up with. So now when it comes to these moving averages, moving average, it is so simple. When you should be in the position to understand what the question needs. Just like this one, the question says calculate the first 6 months moving average for the leading economic indicator. So as I have shown you how best you can approach this question, always make sure that you follow suit even when you are dealing with different set of scenarios, but still dealing with the same concept. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's move on to 4.4. So now 4.4 reads as follow. 4.4 reads as follow. Yeah, 4.4 reads as follow. Reads as follow. Explain the lever curve. Explain the lever curve with the aid of a graph. So now this lever is the name of a person. Is the name of a person. So now he came up with his curve. He has his own approach, and his own approach is with regard to the relationship between total tax revenues as well as tax rate. Meaning, his approach is in line with total tax revenue as well as tax rate. So now let's explain this using a curve. So now the gentleman is saying that let's check. We have this is his curve. This is the curve of Mr. Lever. So on this axis, we have tax rate. So now on this side of the axis, we have total. This side you have total tax revenue. Sorry, because there's no enough space that side. So now let's check the figures. So here we can have 40%, right? And then here we can have B. So here we have R maximum, R max. So yeah, we can have 100%. And then here we can have 0%. Okay, right, grade 12. So now let's check. The government will obtain zero revenue when tax rate is 100. Check. When the tax rate is 100 here, the revenue is what? Is 0. So we are saying that government will receive 0 . revenues when tax rate is 100%. Yes, let's check it at 100. When the tax rate is 100, so now the revenues here is what? 0. Okay, grade 12s. Also, we can say higher tax rates could lead to tax avoidance. Of course, if the government now imposes too much tax rate, either towards businesses or towards individuals, that is going to discourage the availability of labor to work, or it will actually discourage production of goods and services by businesses. So now here we are saying that the higher tax rates, could lead to tax avoidance. Leads to tax avoidance. So now for the graph, you'll be allocated 4 marks for the graph. So for this, also be having 2 marks. You will also be having 2 marks. Okay, all in all, then you get 8 marks. Okay, right. So now let's move on to 4.5. So now 4.5 reads as follows. Analyze the conditions during a boom and how monetary policy cools down the economy in the business cycle. Remember, when the economic activities are at boom, it means that there is full employment of resources. Resources are not being wasted. There is too much efficiency at this point. What we refer to as saying that at this point, or at this turning point, businesses are able to make a lot of profits. Individuals are getting jobs. Also, the government is able to collect enough tax revenues, and also it is able to issue out grants as expected. And also, we have more of the exports than imports. And also, businesses are able to invest whatsoever funds that they have. And also, we'll be having a lot of foreign investors in this regard. Okay, right. So now, let's check out the monetary policy. What is this monetary policy? Monetary policy is the policy that is actually being led by the central bank or reserve bank. So now this policy, it has 2 instruments. And the instruments under this policy, we have monetary supply as well as interest rate. Okay, so now it will depend. It will depend on the behavior of the economy. Like in this regard, if the economy is at boom, it means that almost each and every economic activity is performing in an impressive manner. So now monetary policy in this regard, they are going to limit or reuse the money supply, but now going to increase the level of the interest rate. Okay, right. So now let's check the condition. During boom, high levels of production, employment in economic activities do prevail. Also, our gross domestic product activities normally increase. Also, we check the credit, and high wages will prevail because employment levels are somehow very impressive. And also, we check inflation will accelerate because aggregate demand will exceed aggregate supply. And then as well, the business sector will over-invest to keep up with the accelerated demand for goods and services. Okay, right. So now, the expectation here is to come up with 4 points because of 8 marks. And also the question, it does, I mean, the ones inside the brackets also does give us a lead that the expectation is to come up with 4 points. And each point carries 2 marks. Okay, right, grade 12. So now we are saying that GDP or gross domestic product, GDP activities increase. GDP activities increase. Also, we are saying that credit and higher wages. Credit and high wages Canadian high wages will prevail. Why will it prevail? Because employment levels are high. Okay, right. So now moving on to the next point, saying that the business sector will overinvest to keep up with the accelerated demand for goods and services. Say the demand for goods and services. So the last bullet, we are saying that during a boom, high levels of production employment and economic activities will prevail. Okay, right, grade 12. So now at this level, we have actually completed our question 4.5. So now let's move on to our last section. Our last section is section C. And section C comprises of questions. And the expectation under this section C, it is to make sure that you select one question out of two. And you should spend 40 minutes on this question because it does carry 40 marks. So now the good part of our economics papers, in most cases, they normally also show the time that you must spend under each and every question. So now let's check also the structure of the essay under economics. The structure of the essay under economics is so simple because the bullets that are given or the questions that are given, they actually give you a lead. So now let's check the questions given. When we check the questions given, here we have what? Here we have discuss in detail. We have 26 marks. We also have 10 marks. So now this 26 marks is your what? Your main body. This is main body. And then this one of 10 marks, it is your additional pod. This is your additional part. So now if we check here, what is left? We are left with conclusion. And then we're also left with introduction. And grade 12, remember, under economics, in most cases under economics, the expectation is to always make sure that you don't write or you don't structure your essay using paragraphs, but you prefer you guys to always make sure that you write in a bullet format. So now I know most people under, especially this essay, they think it is somewhat very complicated. No, it is not complicated. These marks also can give you a lead of what you must actually do. So now under the introduction part, the expectation is to come up with 2 points, of which 1 point carries 1 mark. And also under the main body, the major essence there also under main body, you should come up with 13 points, of which each point carries 2 marks, then that will lend to 26 marks. And also under the additional part, the expectation as well is to come up with 5 points, of which each point carries 2 marks. So now coming to conclusion, the expectation is also to come up with 2 points. So now let's check the introduction under this. So now when we check the introduction under this question. So now the question reads as follows. The first one for question 5. Let's now deal with question 5. So now after question 5, that's when now we'll move on to question 6. So now the question reads, discuss in detail reasons for public sector failure and link them to typical problems experienced through public sector provision. What is this public sector? The public sector here will refer to the state or the government that provide individuals or the economy with free gold. Okay, right. So now what can be the introduction of this? The introduction can be the public sector failure occurs when government intervention fails to meet the desired outcome, making the existing economy situation worse. I'll come again for the introduction. Introduction, you can say public sector failure occurs when government intervention fails to meet the desired outcome, making the existing economic situation more worse. Okay, right. So now let's check the main